the flow of fund in and out of your business, so they can then dimension and say, okay, this kind of business is matured enough to take this kind of amount in terms of debt, maybe in terms of whatever it is, they can dimension it. Then in terms of personnel, you cannot be well, maybe when you start, you want to do everything and be the MD, the accountant, the whatever. But as you progress in your business, you must begin to differentiate between who is doing what and who is doing. So you may not necessarily have to do it yourself or hire people who will be on retainer. You can outsource, so to speak. So all of these things are very important when you're growing your business, because if you don't present it in such manner, people will just feel that, look, you've not really started. This, especially a commercial loan, you cannot attract commercial loan. So that is how to start.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's something, Babatunde, you mentioned now, and that's about using IP as collateral. I'm wondering, Promise, is Bank of Industry moving towards that direction as well? Because I've sat in conversations with Afri-Exim Bank, for example. Last year at Canex, we were put into a high-level think tank to look at funding across Africa with the African Union. And these are the things that came up, right? You can say you have, I think Afri-Exim Bank has about $1 billion or something for the creative industry. And the question is, how many people have been able to access that, right? So a lot of people sitting in the room want to have access to funding, but there are very tight bottlenecks. So are you at that place as Bank of Industry where you can actually collateralize IP?
In fact, interestingly, we did this 8 years ago. When we came up with the Nolly Fund product program, of course, was popular, and then we were able to fund about 25 films, right? We didn't request for any collateral. The maximum loan amount at that time was about 50 million, so we fully depended on IP, right? We recorded some, fragmented success, and that was because the distribution at that time was quite limited. Today, you have sources of various platforms that you can distribute your film, not just Netflix, Amazon. You have the film house, you have even YouTube and so on and so forth, right? So, but then it was difficult, so we did that. In fact, right now, if we're able to establish that you have a distribution contract, right, maybe with a Netflix or good distribution contract that can actually cover up your loan, we can also depend on that. We can depend on that in actual sense. So talking about IP is not strange. We did it with about 25 films, and we dedicated about 1 billion naira to that particular program. But let me also go back to the structure he mentioned. In fairness to the industry has actually improved. Because when we started creative industry financing about 12 years ago, when you talk to normal creative about business plan, they look at you from head to toe and say, what are you talking about? I'm imaginative, I'm creative. I don't need a business plan, right? But at some point, and even with the support of the British Council at the time, we started organizing, capacity building classes, and they came to know that even the business plan is very important for the personal plan, right? So today, if they walk up to you, in fairness to them, they come up with comprehensive budgets, starting from pre-production, production, post-production, and then even down to distribution. Today, they do cash flow. So they understand what business plan is all about. And then some of them actually have structure. I'll give you an instance with Jado Siberu, right? When she walked in, she was actually quite new in the business. But we tried her out. That's why when they talk about greenfield, BO is cool with greenfield. But the most important thing is that we should be able to see some evidence, some light around the structure. Today, some lady is dealing with Amazon, but when she came to us, she dealt with Filmhouse, right?
Yes.
And then she has gone about 4 times. In fact, she's one of our Hall of Famers as we speak today. She has legal representative, she has accountant, she has all the structures, right? In fact, recently, she even got support from one of the banks in terms of bank guarantee, if you ask me. So structure is quite critical, and then your value proposition has to also be straightforward. Again, one thing about the industry is that you guys hate collaboration. I don't know why. You can't do it all alone. You might have the IP, somebody else might even have the property. Because I've seen a lot of investors who are interested in the industry, so they want to invest. But when you make your first, somebody spoke about it, about your pitch, right?
Yes.
When you make your first presentation, because sometimes you just need 5 minutes to convince your investor, even if you have the most important value proposition in the world. right? So if you're able to project that very well, you'll get funding. Funding is democratized across. BOI has gone from film funding to digital right now, and that's why the new group that you have in BOI, which was actually structured from the old creative industry group, is creative and digital. We are even funding things like digital bank as we speak today. We fund technology. So we've gone a whole hog. Today we have about 4 broad areas that you can actually access funding from. And each of those broad areas has other segments.
You want to talk about the broad areas?
The broad areas?
Yes.
Yes. Talking about even the media content, the content we've talked about. Even talking about distribution, all right, film house. You know, most of the film cinemas today were funded by BOI too. Supported by BOI because even content, right? Then we talk about entertainment, infrastructure. Because for us, that's most critical. Without infrastructure, you can't grow the industry. Today, the arena that we have today is a co-hotel. We do respect to them, right? But other countries have arenas everywhere. So today we are funding one, which is going to be ready by second quarter of 2024, right? Look at what our Afrobeat guys are doing overseas. Those guys are cashing out. The nearest place that you can go to is South Africa's Sun Arena. So if we have something like O2 Arena in Nigeria, of course, you can actually strengthen the industry. So we are doing that right now. Absolutely. So that's the infrastructure aspect of creative industry that we are funding. Now, talking about the studio too, today you can have a world-class studio in Nigeria to support the Bank of Industry, right? To be able to compete with your peers overseas. Then if you move to that, you talk about, is it craft, art and craft? Is it theater? Of course, we did one of the most vibrant theaters in this country. Talk about the theater culture. We need more of that. And we're still supporting the expansion of cinemas across the country because it's never enough. For those who can reach out to Netflix, they can actually they can actually distribute their films to what's called cinemas as well. So moving down from that, we are doing digital, we're doing art and craft, as I mentioned, we're doing platforms, right? So it's quite expansive as we speak.
Thank you so much. Just before I leave you, for someone, you said something about being a greenhorn, like Ejade walks in and there are certain things you saw and you supported her. What are those things that, you're looking out for from, a possible greenhorn, somebody who doesn't necessarily have a track record, but, there are certain things that will make you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to fund this project?
Yes. No, for we financiers, what we actually look out for is your value proposition, right? Like he mentioned, it's not grant. If I look at a project or your value proposition, I will know whether it's viable or not. And most importantly, I should be able to establish from your value proposition that when I invest, right, by way of debt financing or equity financing, my money will go back. Because it evolves in front. If it stops with you, it will not go around to the next person. And that was what happened with Naturally Nullified. So if I look at a greenhorn, the next thing I want to see is your business plan. Because you're not just a greenhorn. You must have been muting the idea, grow the idea, and then even sometimes in other areas that are not even creative finance and even oil and gas, what we look at for, you see people coming with greenhorn, but we're seeing the partners, right, within the structure and partnering with these organizations to be able to actually transmit that idea. So value proposition is number one. And then we'll be able to sit down with you and then look at your projected financials too, right? If we're able to establish that correctly, we'll be able to start the conversation and then extend it from there.
All right. I will just, okay, Lami, you want to say something? Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. May I ask, was the collateral element a major factor for you in granting that greenhorn's the collateral element, and what was the collateral that she was able to present at the time when she walked in newly? Okay,
so what happened is that she partnered with an investor who actually brought in the collateral because the Nolly Fund program was a ring-fenced program, wanted to help the industry, and most of them don't have collateral. So what we did was to say, okay, you know what? Let's bring in distributors. Let's bring in studio guys so we can ring-fence, put everybody in a partnership, okay, to be able to progress that. But at that time, she felt that she had her own studio that she was actually partnering with. Again, so she could speak to one or two investors who said, okay, we are ready to support you. That goes down to the value proposition we are talking about. They had confidence in her, right? And they supported her. So when she did the first film, that was to run for 4-year tenure, but she paid on record time of 18 months. She came back for the second one, paid within 14 months. Yeah, collateral was actually involved. Came back the third one. The fourth one that she was going to come back to, one of the banks said, we are ready to support you.
Oh, wow.
So it's
So the trajectory
the
actually
trajectory from day one.
From day one is
Yes.
actually important.
Right.
Babatunde, I mean, we're still talking about greenhorns because, this is one space that the film industry haven't really figured out, in terms of either debt financing. So what will you tell people who don't necessarily have all, the experience, like you said, 3 years for the CBN financing you need. So for those who are actually just going, just to make sure they don't make the mistakes of, those who have not succeeded, what you have to tell them?
Okay, thank you very much. I know Larry mentioned about building the structure.
Yes.
That's very, very important. But also for beyond these guys, the system also needs to be de-risked, the ecosystem. And I just want to talk about that. Because the first I told you about Netflix. Yeah. The fact that you have Netflix and some of these other platforms seeking these contents and paying for them, de-risk the system, where whatever your final product is going. But see, where we have the main issue is the distribution in Nigeria. There's this statistic that says in America, you have about a cinema to about 20,000 people. In India, is about 120,000 people to a cinema. In Nigeria, is about over 1 million. And in India today, you can see a creative, somebody who is into filmmaking, walk into a bank there, get loan. He knows that when the production comes out, when the final product comes out, it's going to be distributed simultaneously in all those cinemas. They will pay different prices depending on the place, on the location. And within 1 month, they'll be able to pay back the bank. Before they will now, this same film can now be put on whichever platforms again. But the first 1 to 2 months, because of the extensive distribution channels that they have, I think the challenge I will also give to us, and especially to Bank of Industry, is how do we help create more of these channels? More of these channels. Because if you don't have more of them, the few will become the price takers. They will become the price givers, even to these creatives. You will not even get your product's value when you come out. You just be at the mercy of the owners of some of these, distribution channels. Therefore, we need to build that such that you know that immediately I'm coming out with this, you have ready people, ready market for it via the distribution channels.
I completely share this perspective because, looking at the value chain and the ecosystem generally, there are producers that today, they are making a lot of money from YouTube. I know producers who make $10,000, $15,000 every month on YouTube. And then they also have the budget, the kind of movies that they can put on YouTube. They make films between 3.5 million, not high budget kind of films. And they've grown their following. And that income has been consistent. There are producers who earn as much as, going to Naira, 30 million every month. Yes, I can tell you that authoritatively. And so that is YouTube. And then you move to the streaming platforms, which is like the new guys in the block, right? And like you rightly said, it's not everybody who has access or who will get on those streaming platforms, right? And then we are in a country of 200 million people. And unfortunately, we have not been able to, create something that can also help our local industry to be able to monetize. Because at the end of the day, it's just about monetization of content, you see. So I think it's extremely important, like you said, to begin to look inwards beyond, because no matter how, if you buy a latest Lamborghini and there's no fuel in it doesn't make sense. So how the drivers, what is going to drive this industry is, like you rightly said, the infrastructure. Now, when you go to cinema, a lot of producers are very averse with going into, cinema because they feel that, oh, there's a lot of things playing out there that they don't understand. And then, there are just few people, you can count them, who have understood the cinema cycle and who consistently are able to hit that 100 million, maybe 150 to 200 million mark. I'm not sure they're up to 10, but they understand how to they've broken into the cinema, they've grown the followership, and successfully, their movies have continued to gross the kind of money that they expect, at least from the cinema. So, what I'm just trying to, I think this is my own contribution, so we can go into Q&A, is the whole ecosystem, there are different roles. There are different roles that this whole entire ecosystem plays, and how can we also, beyond just producers, given producers, there are other people who are, the distributors are there, like you rightly said, the exhibitors are there, the streaming platforms are also there. How can we go beyond just, supporting the producers to also make sure that the people who help to drive the revenue are also supported? So I think that's very crucial from what I've listened to these conversations, and beyond production, there's a whole lot of other things that are very, very important to this ecosystem. Yes. Just last words, and then we'll take questions.
My passing shot will be, we cannot isolate ourselves from the economy, right? So the purchasing power is also a factor in all of this. The majority of the demographic that's usually produce, consume, or even distribute the content that we're talking about, or the industry we're talking about, they are youth. So most of them, they're still in school, or they just got out of school. They don't have the good jobs that they need to be able to make room for disposable income. The ones that have jobs, they're still struggling with their finances. So all of these are elements that contribute to the lack of growth within the industry. So when we're looking at all of that, we must be careful, because you can't just start building cinemas and there are no footfalls. People are not going. You can't start building arenas and you can't feel it. We have stadia all over Nigeria. When our local teams are playing football, how many people do you see in the stadia? How many? In the 70s and the 80s, people used to go to the stadia to watch football live. But people don't do that again. They rather sit at home and watch it on DSTV. So a number of things need to be, well thought out and planned out